Hi, everyone. I think we are live. Perfect. So, thank you so much for joining me in this session where we discuss how to become somebody who gets into ISB. ISB, as you all know, is one of India's best MBA programs for experienced candidates. And a very quick introduction about me. I am Piyush Ranjan. I am the founder of Management Masters. We are a boutique admissions consulting firm focused on the top MBA programs worldwide. And with ISB, we've been working on ISB applications for the last 7 years, and we've had exceptional results with almost 75% of our candidates succeeding when they apply to ISB. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for spending the Sunday evening with me. And I'm really looking forward to this session. Uh, One of the biggest things that I've always noticed when working with candidates for ISB applications has been the lack of confidence from a lot of candidates who do not believe that they are good enough for ISB or other top schools. And this has always been something that really irks me because I personally believe that most of the top candidates, most candidates who are serious enough about their preparation, they already bring a lot of things to the table which ISB would really want to see. So, where does this mismatch actually happen? This mismatch begins primarily because of the incorrect understanding that a lot of candidates have with respect to what actually does ISB or any other top school wants from their candidates. And that essentially is the reason why we wanted to have this session. We'll begin with a very quick understanding of what we do. We'll talk about the agenda. We'll start with a very quick introduction. Then we'll talk very much in detail about understanding what the ISB admissions process looks like. And then we'll go into Q&A. And meanwhile, please feel free to sort of share any questions that you might have in the chat box. We'll keep picking up questions from the chat so that we are able to answer any questions that you have. We already have a lot of questions from all of you. We had almost 70 people register for the webinar, and we have a lot of questions in place, but we will also do a live Q&A and we can answer any questions that you might have so that we are able to answer and clarify as many questions as possible during the session. So thank you so much again for joining us. And let's begin with a very quick introduction. So as I said, my name is Piyush Ranjan. I'm the founder of Management Masters, and I graduated from IIT BHU, and then I went on to do my master's in management at University of St. Gallen. It's the number one MIM program in the world for the last, I think, 14, 15 years. Uh, After that, I worked across the globe, in Hong Kong, in Switzerland, in Netherlands. Obviously, I've worked in India. And I came back to India in 2019. That's when I started Management Masters, to help other candidates really help them understand and get into some of the top business schools around the world. Uh, Gopala is our lead ISB advisor. He might be able to join us. He's traveling, unfortunately, so he won't be able to join us for the entire session, but he might be able to join us during the session. But let's see. He's our lead ISB advisor, and he was a lawyer who turned into a consultant after ISB, and he has had a great run so far. Last year, he worked with 11 candidates for ISB, out of which 10 received interview invites. So that tells you the kind of caliber that he brings to the table. And we're very fortunate to have Gopala on our side. We also have Aniket as our team member. He's based out of Japan. He works and he lives in Tokyo, and he also has had a great run with ISB applicants. Now, over the last 7 years, what we have done essentially is we've built a very clear niche and a lot of focus on the top 25 MBA programs worldwide. Within India, ISB is the only school that we focus on. And over the last 7 years, we have had almost 80 admits to ISB. Our candidates have, won almost $3.5 million in scholarships. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we've had a 75% success rate for ISB so far. How do we do that? How do we get such a massive success rate for ISB? We have a dedicated program for ISB applications, what we call as ISB Edge. It's a dedicated 6-week program you start, where you go from start to finish of ISB application within 6 weeks, right? And it's a very, very highly personalized program where we help you brainstorm your journey, your life experiences. We help you figure out what you need to write, how can you present yourself in the best possible way, and then obviously we help you with the resume prep and essay reviews. And you see the results in 2020. For the 2026 intake, we had 31 people who applied to ISB with us, out of which 26 people received interview invites. And that's a massive, massive sort of success rate of almost 83% of applications working out, out of which then 21 people go received admits from ISB, and also almost 40 lakhs in INR, almost 40 lakhs in scholarships for those candidates. So the process that we have, it's the reason why it works essentially is because it's a super, super personalized process. We don't have any templates to give out. We don't give you any fill in the blanks kind of questionnaires. It's focused and it's built around a very dedicated uh, process which allows you to unearth stories from your own experiences, your own journey. That allows you to then present a very, very authentic self to the ISB admissions team, which in turn then gets you the admit. Now, very quickly, before we go into understanding what exactly ISB admissions is about, again, please feel free to sort of share any questions that you might have. We are looking forward to sort of answering any questions you have. You can put in your questions in the chat box, and we'll be very happy to sort of clarify all those questions as we move ahead. Now, when it comes to understanding the ISB admissions criteria, you know, the this is the base where I would want you to start with. A lot of people come with the apprehension that, I belong to a certain category. I come from a very non-traditional background for an MBA, right? Or I come from a very overrepresented background for the MBA. So can I still make it? Am I good enough? Right? Similarly, you have people with GMAT scores, or GRE scores who are planning to apply. Now, what I want to showcase here, essentially, this is the class profile for the 2027, the class of 2027 for ISB. And you see almost 38% of candidates came from one single industry, and that is, the IT and professional services industry. And then 21% came from banking, financial services, and insurance, right? So that's almost 60% of the class you have there. Now, the idea that you need to sort of understand, that all candidates need to understand, is if you belong to these two industries, obviously this number of 38% and 21%, this is influenced maximum by the amount of, or the number of candidates who are applying from these industries, right? Because there are so many candidates applying from these industries, that's why you have so many candidates at ISB who are from these industries. And hence, the competitiveness for people who come from such industries would also be very, very high, right? It will be much more difficult for people from these industries to break into ISB because you naturally have a very, very large pool of exceptional candidates who are applying to ISB. And that is what makes them much more competitive in nature. At the same time, just because it's going to be more competitive, you see, 60% of the class is still made up of these industries. So just because you come from this industry does not mean that you won't be able to make it to ISB. It's just going to be more competitive for you. And you will need to sort of present a very, very solid case when you apply. So that is what I would suggest you to take. So take away from this that, yes, look at the class profile, but at the end of the day, what matters the most is what you are presenting yourself as. If your application is strong enough, irrespective of whether you belong to a certain industry or not, you will be taken into ISB. When it comes to GMAT scores and GRE scores, and this was one of the bigger questions that we also got from a lot of candidates, was that what is the right score to apply with, or I have a certain score and is it good enough for ISB or not? And you see, ISB very clearly publishes the range that they have for different scores. So if you have the GMAT Classic, the range this year was 640 to 780. And the average or the median was around 720. For GMAT Focus, the average is around 675. For the GRE, the average is around 325. So the idea is the closer you are to the average score, or if you are higher than the average score, obviously you are increasing your chances of success at ISB. And the farther you are from the average, or the lower you are from the average, the lesser your chances are going to be because you're going to be less competitive compared to the rest of the pool who's applying to ISB. Right. So this is something I think that candidates should simply keep in mind, that your job while applying to any top B school is to maximize your competitiveness and present yourself in the best possible way. So when it comes to figuring out what score should you apply with, or should you apply with a certain score or not, simply look at the the average is a very good indicator of what kind of score should you be looking at, right? Now, mm, right. Let's come to a bit more detail of what exactly ISB is looking for. And this year, ISB has updated its admission criteria. Uh, Earlier, it used to be about your academic capabilities, your leadership capabilities, and diversity. And now, this year, they have changed it slightly. They have made it into, they want candidates who display analytical thinking, who have demonstrated leadership potential, and who display a commitment to growth. These are the three values or the three characteristics that ISB is looking for in their applications as they evaluate, the applications. The question is, where do you get these aspects, or how do you figure out these aspects? The analytical thinking aspect of it will largely come from your academic career and your professional career that you've had, because that's where you will be able to showcase the kind of quantitative aptitude that you've built, or how you've built the analytical thinking within your uh, in your life. The demonstrated leadership potential, for this what you need to look at are the life experiences that you have had, or the professional experiences you've had, where you have been able to showcase certain leadership traits. Now, one of the biggest questions that I get from candidates here is that I have not led a team, right? So how can I showcase leadership? One of the most important things to understand here is when top B schools ask for leadership potential, they're not looking for people who have led teams. They're literally looking for simple proof that you are somebody who can turn into a leader in the future. And for that, leading does not equate with leading teams. Leading can equate with any kind of leadership role that you might have taken. It could be about standing up for something or volunteering for something. It could be about raising your voice when you saw something was going wrong. It could be about taking an initiative. Uh, so the leadership potential that you can showcase to ISB or any other top B school, it's less about whether you have led teams or not. It's more about if you showcase certain traits that will demonstrate that you can become a leader in the future. And the third aspect of commitment to growth is essentially how you have grown so far in your career or in your life, and what is that approach that you take to it. And ISB's essay questions, if you look at them, they directly align with this aspect. The second essay that they have is about, the learning outcomes or the learning approach that you have. And that is a great place to showcase how you have been committed to growth through your life, right? So ideally, look back at your life experiences to showcase how you have grown through different challenges. What is the thought process that you employ, uh, and what lets you grow? Across all of these experiences that you've had, whether your academic experiences, your life experiences, or your professional experiences, what you realize very quickly is to be able to answer and showcase these values, you need to have a lot of self reflection. because self reflection is the only way in which you will be able to actually figure out how you demonstrate all these three value systems to ISB. Now, one way that you could do this is by breaking it down into multiple facets. So, the way we work with candidates is essentially by breaking it down into four primary areas: academics, career, extracurriculars, and self awareness. The academic aspect essentially stands for, the academic pursuits that you've had in your life. It could relate to the grades that you have or the test scores that you submit. What it tells you is essentially that, the grades as well as the test scores, they are very, very crucial, because these are the only places in your life through which you will be able to showcase the academic capability that you bring to the table, right? Because MBA curriculums are very rigorous in nature. They're very quantitative in nature. So having good grades or having good test scores, they simply accentuate that aspect of your candidature that yes, you are somebody who, when you come into the classroom, when you join the ISB class, you will not struggle with the MBA curriculum. You will be able to handle that very well. And obviously, if you have low grades, if you have low test scores, they will affect your competitiveness of the overall profile that you bring. Now, a lot of candidates also ask the question, "Ki, if I already have low grades, so how can I compensate for that?" When it comes to the academic aspect, the only way to compensate for that is through the test scores, right? So if you have low grades, make sure that you sort of go beyond. You don't have average test scores, you have above average test scores. Uh, and the great thing that ISB has done this year is, instead of calling it academic capability, they have turned it into analytical thinking. So apart from the academics, you can also showcase your analytical thinking through the professional work that you have done, right? So if, let's say, you don't have great grades or you don't have great test scores, you can still rely on your professional experiences to highlight how you have developed that analytical thinking, right? That will also be very, very useful for you. So within your essays or in your LORs, make sure that you highlight this aspect of analytical thinking, that you are somebody who's very pragmatic, who's very good with quants, uh, and hence you will be able to sort of meet the rigorous standards that ISP has. So I hope that clarifies. Again, we'll come to any questions that you have, and please share them in the in the chat box, and I'll be very happy sort of picking them up. The next part, apart from the academics, as we move forward, is the career aspect. And career is undoubtedly one of the most important aspects of your overall profile, because that is essentially the professional journey that you've had. Now, within career, what you have are three aspects that we suggest looking at: the past, the present, and the future. The past is essentially what you have done so far, the experiences that you have had, the growth trajectory that you have had, how you have learned things, what are the challenges that you have overcome, the impact that you have created through your work, right? So, presenting your past experiences in a very solid manner so that it helps ISB understand all of these aspects, that is very, very crucial, because they will also directly align with the leadership, the commitment to growth, and the leadership aspects of your life. When it comes to the future, that is where your goals come into picture. And your goals need to be something which sound feasible as well as very realistic. For instance, if you come from a marketing background and you say that my goal post an MBA is to become an investment banker, all of you will laugh because it sounds very unrealistic. Is that a feasible outcome? Yes. Through an MBA, investment banking is quite a feasible outcome. But is it a realistic outcome in your case? That is very unlikely, because you come from a background where you have had no exposure to finance. So when you look at your short-term goals or your long-term goals and the rationale behind those goals, there needs to be a very clear connection of what have you done and what do you want to do next, as well as at the same time, they need to be feasible and realistic. Because if your career goals are not tied in with realism, then you are setting yourself up for failure. and ISB would not want to be a part of that. So one of the biggest reasons that a lot of candidates miss out on getting an admit is usually because they don't have a lot of clarity on their goals. Let me very quickly sort of get back into some of the questions that we have received. Uh, so we have a question: what entails grades? Is it only undergrad GPA or high school percentages too? Uh, Thank you for asking that. Uh, the grades, the primary part of it, the most important part of it would be your undergrad GPA. ISB does ask for your 12th marks, and they might play a small role, but I don't believe they would play a massive role in your journey. So if somebody has like a 98% in 12th, but they have a 6.2 in your actual bachelor's, I don't believe that will create a very, very good impression. Uh, but if it's vice versa, if somebody has 60% in 12th, but 9.8 in their actual bachelor's, I think that could be a very, very strong signal to ISB of how your academic capability is. Let's take a few more questions that we got during, when you registered. And so we have a question on work experience. How does ISB really evaluate work experience? Uh, Years, role, industry, company brand, non-traditional careers like doctors, teachers, or niche roles, right? So when it comes to work experience, as I mentioned, the work experience will be evaluated on two grounds. One, do you come across as somebody who has grown, who has, uh, grown through your career? If you display certain good professional qualities, maybe like taking initiatives or, showcasing those leadership aspects. And the second is going to be in terms of, so essentially, what are the things that you've learned? And the second is going to be in terms of the impact that you've created. So, what was the actual impact of your work, right? Was it strong enough? Was it good enough for the position that you were in, right? Both of these things essentially come into picture. With respect to the different industries that you might belong to, that is almost immaterial because whether you are a lawyer, whether you are a doctor, whether you are an engineer, whether you are a consultant, anything, it will always come down to the work that you have done and the impact that you have created and how you have grown, right? So, irrespective of which background you may come from, your work will always be evaluated on these two fronts. We also had a question on GMAT GRE, but I think I've already answered it. What GMAT GRE score should I realistically target for ISB? And how much does the score matter versus the rest of the profile? Right. Thank you for asking that. The GMAT GRE scores, as we discussed just now, the academic aspect, i- if you're taking the GMAT Focus Edition averages are 675. So try to be as close to 675 as possible or above that. That will give you the maximum competitiveness for your candidature. If you're looking at the GRE, then 325 is the baseline and try to be as close to 325 if you're below it or above 325. And that will again give you the maximum competitiveness. So that is essentially what we are looking at as target scores. I would not My personal suggestion whenever somebody asks me about what should be my target score, I would never suggest you to have 675 as your target score or 325 as your target score because eventually, if you have that as your target, whatever you target, you always fall short of it, right? So if you want to have a target, I would say target 805, try for the best that you can, and then sort of give your test because that will put you in a position where you don't have any regrets. You know that you have given your best for the test and you cannot do better than that, and then simply apply. So I hope that clarifies. With respect to how much does the score matter, the test scores always, for any top B school, test scores are always part of the equation, right? And they will never matter more than 15, 20%. That's it. What that means is ISB average is 675. Somebody applies with a GMAT of 735. Just because they have a very high GMAT score does not mean that they are going to get an admit. And this is something that you would have already seen around you. You would have always heard of stories where somebody with a massive GMAT score was rejected from ISB without an interview or after an interview. And this tells you essentially that the GMAT or the GRE, the scores are one aspect of the overall profile. They are a bar or they are simply a checkbox for the B school. They are looking for people who meet a certain criteria, and then they will move on to the rest of the things. Even if you look at the data, uh, let me just go back. Right. So if you see this, the GMAT focus scores, the range is from 575 to 595, right? While the median is 675. So there was somebody with a GMAT focus score of 575 who ended up getting into ISB, right? So this is also one very common question that I get, and it's a massive myth that floats around that if you have a low GMAT score, your application is not going to be read. That is the most bullshit argument ever. Because if that was the case, the 575 guy would have never made it to ISB. Or the person who got a 309 in GRE would have never made it to ISB. So your applications will be read. And depending on how impactful the rest of your application is, obviously everything, every aspect of your candidature is going to be sort of, marked. And based on the different weightages, you are going to get a call or a shortlist or not. What I can definitely tell you is that if you were somebody who comes from a very overrepresented pool, where there is a lot of competition, then you need to be closer to the average or higher than that, because that is what will position you in the best possible manner. So what I can guarantee you is that the person who got in with the 575 would not have been a male engineer in IT working in IT, because this is one of the most competitive pools. A lot of candidates from this pool apply. And ISB has no reason to take somebody with a 575 from this pool who has been doing a normal job, because there is no why should they when they have better candidates. So, what I can tell you for sure is that this person with the 575 would have had a very differentiated profile. They probably would have been, a national level athlete or doing something so different that it is impossible for ISB to find such a person in the normal course of, you know, everything working out. And that is one reason why it would have worked for them. So that would have created a massive differentiation for them. As far as what score should you be targeting, try to always remain at the average or above the average, because that will help you maximize your chances for getting an admit. I hope that clarifies. Let's go to one more question and then we move on to the next part. So we have a question from Saksham. I want to know if we should keep working on the GMAT score improvement, even if one has scored near to the GMAT range. So if I score a 635 in GMAT FE, should I then focus on my application solely? Thank you for that. That's a very, very nice question. Um, I would suggest you to take professional suggestion in that case, because what you might think of it is close enough for the B school may not actually be close enough, right? So just because, so you have a 635, the range is the minimum and the maximum, right? You 635, the average is at 675. If you are somebody, if you are a candidate who comes from a very overrepresented pool of applicants, so you are an engineer, you're working at TCS and in an IT software development role, 635 is not even a thought that should cross your mind, because that pool of applicants is very, very difficult, and you need to be able to create a differentiation for yourself. So ideally, you should not stop at 635. You should try to be as close to the average as possible. So 675 kind of becomes a baseline for you. But if you are somebody who you've not, you're a doctor and you've worked in the clinic, you've gone for an international assignment or something else, and you're a female candidate. So a lot of diversity elements that you bring to the table. 635 could be an absolutely okay score to apply with, right? Even then, there is always going to be a chance that it may not work out, right? But try to remain as close to the average scores as possible because they will help you maximize your chances, right? So I hope that clarifies. Let's move on. Let's move to the extracurriculars. And extracurriculars, I love talking about this because this is where some of the biggest misconceptions lie. Extracurriculars, let me sort of state it at the outset itself. It's not about working in NGOs. It's not about building a social impact profile for yourself, right? We got this question, in fact, and some of you shared this question. How can I build my social impact profile before ISB? Nobody cares. ISB does not want social workers, right? Any top business school does not want social workers. At the end of the day, the place that you're trying to get into, it's a business school. They want to have people who learn how to do businesses, who want to learn about how to run businesses. They're not looking for uh, social impact, right? If they were, they would be called a school of public policy. And there is a separate school of public policy. You are planning to apply to the Indian School of Business. Businesses don't care about, you know, NGOs or social impact exclusively. So the first thing that you need to do is understand what extracurriculars are about and what B schools are really looking after. Almost all top MBA programs are built around community. They are run by the students for the students, right? So what any top business school wants is to understand how have you previously interacted with the communities around you. The shame here is that the a lot of people have turned this community aspect into underprivileged communities or non-profit work. And that is where this myth has begun from. So it's less about what you have done socially, it's more about what have you done for your communities. So if you are a musician and you play in a band with your friends, and you have gone on, you have performed in your office or you've done multiple shows, that is also you being part of a community outside of your work. And that also works, right? If you are somebody who loves going on bike rides and you've been part of a bike ride club and you've organized those, that also works because you're part of a community. And obviously, if you are somebody who loves teaching others and you've taught a lot of children and you've gone out of your way to do that, that also works. So NGO is not equivalent to extracurricular activities. And there are so many other things that you could highlight which help you showcase the kind of person that you are outside of your professional life. And that is what essentially B schools are looking for. They are not looking for people who have exceptional social impact work, right? To be able to do all this, the most important aspect is being self aware. The entire point of your application, when you write what the kind of person that you are, the goals that you have, why do you want to come to ISB, all of this requires an immense amount of self awareness. To be able to showcase the values that ISB is looking for and any other top B school is looking for, to be able to showcase with a lot of authenticity the kind of person that you are, that requires a lot of self-awareness. And that's where self-awareness directly relates with the fit that you bring with the B school. It will help you showcase why do you belong here, right? Any top business school is a place for people with a lot of work experience. The average experience at ISB is almost around 50 months, right? So they want people who will add value to that community by thoughtful interaction, by meaningful interaction. And that's why this fit becomes very important. If you are somebody who does not know what they want in life, you will have a terrible time at ISB because you will not be able to enjoy all the resources that it offers, right? You won't have a clue which resource to go for and which not to. And this is where this self awareness becomes very, very important. So start with that self awareness, start thinking about what you want, why you want it, get as much clarity as possible, and that will help you create a lot of strong essays. That will help you bring out very, very crucial, authentic experiences to the fore, which will help you build a very, very strong application. And these four steps are also the core of what we do, right? How we work at the ISB Edge. Uh, ISB Edge, it's a very, very intensive 6 week program, as we mentioned earlier. And you can learn more about it at our website, managementmasters.in. It's a very personalized process because that is where we interact with the candidates heavily. We help them reflect, we help them brainstorm, and then draft the essays, right? And when it comes to the essay reviews or the resume reviews, we don't have any limits on that because it doesn't make sense. So we work with you to help you build the best possible version of your applications, to help you present the best possible version of you without any limits. Now, two things that we require for it is we want people who have already valid test scores because that helps us move with certainty. You could be a great candidate on paper, but if you don't have test scores and you've worked on the entire program, and then for some reason you don't end up achieving the test scores that you had in mind, the only person who loses out is you. So we want to ensure that the candidates that we work with, they have invested their time, their money, their efforts into something that could have been more certain, right? And before we get started working together, it requires a mandatory profile audit because it helps us align our expectations, uh, so that we also believe in your candidature. We believe that you have all the things that ISB requires. We have multiple intakes for the ISB Edge program. Since it's a 6 week program, it starts on a particular date and finishes on a particular date. The round one deadline for ISB is 20th of September. So we have four different intakes. The first intake for ISB Edge, it begins on 17th of May, that is next Sunday, and it will run for a period of 6 weeks. So by 28th of June, the candidates who start working with us on 17th of May, they will have finished their ISB application. 31st of May, the second round begins, the second intake, and then they would have finished their applications by 12th of July. So this is how we sort of build all our timelines. We run a very, very tight ship. It's a very intense program because that is how you get to build the best possible application that you could have. Also, to clarify, these are very, very short, limited seats programs. We don't work with hundreds of candidates. As you saw, we worked with 31 candidates in the entire year last year. So we are also very selective about the candidates that we work with. And we have very, very small capacities. Now, very quickly, before we jump onto the offers and discounts, let's see if there are any other questions. Um, Somebody, Farhan has said he scored a 695 but was put under waitlist R2. ISB feedback suggests weak essays and below average interviews. Should I try to score more in GMAT as I'm from a male software engineer? Absolutely not. You already have your feedback from ISB that the essays were weak or the interviews were, it was below average. That essentially tells you exactly what we have been talking about, the self-awareness aspect, the clarity on what you should have said or what are you trying to do, why are you trying to do it. That is what was missing. And that is why you were put on waitlist. So definitely work on the essays and sort of improving your interview skills. But the GMAT score, you're absolutely fine because you're already above the average and nothing wrong with it. There's another question. Extracurriculars done during later half of high school, um, do they count, or is there a recency bias? Uh, in general, high school extracurriculars would not be counted. They will not have a lot of impact because what matters more is the recent aspects, right? So anything beyond college, so college onwards essentially is what we focus on primarily. High school, you could go back to only if you have something absolutely exceptional. So, for instance, we were working, I think a few years ago, we were working with somebody who had represented India in the under 15 table tennis. He was the India captain for under 15 table tennis team. So absolutely we would talk about it, right? But because it was of such a high stature that not talking about it does not make sense. But otherwise, in general, we would not. Uh, okay, somebody's asking, how do we get feedback from ISB? It's very simple. Email it to the AdCom. They will share links with you to sort of put you on a timeline, and then you can connect with them and get that feedback. Right. So let's get back to the presentation, the offers and discounts that we offer. And this is something that we are doing for the first time. And it's going to be for a very limited period of time. Let me put the links here. What we did essentially was we took 20 essays from our successful candidates this year across a different across different profiles, across different issues that they faced or the challenges that they thought they had. And we converted that into a collection of essays. So you can now think, okay, let me see, the comment is gone, not gone. All right. So we have a very special ebook, and I think the link should be working as well. So we have a very special ebook that essentially is a collection of 20 essays from our past candidates, and these are real essays that have worked that tell you exactly what they wrote. Obviously, they are anonymized because of confidentiality reasons. And we are very thankful that these candidates sort of agreed to sort of share their essays with you. But this is something that we are making available only for tonight at a discount. You can use the code 20 ISB essays. I've posted the link in the chat. And we have also tagged all the different profiles that we have shared with the kind of challenges that they faced. So, for instance, you will find people who had low GMAT scores of 635. You will find people who had career gaps of 4 years because they were preparing for UPSC. You will find people from overrepresented majorities like engineers coming from an IT background. You will find people who had less work experience of 2 years. You will find people coming from pharma backgrounds, architects, and you'll see how each of these people approach their essays and sort of really got to build very, very impactful essays that help them get into ISB, and some of them with very, very hefty scholarships. And this is something which is very, very exclusive. Uh, I know that a lot of you, the reason why we've built this essentially is we noticed that a lot of candidates, obviously, you will go to Google, you will look for sample essays, and you will end up reading something which you have no way of authenticating. You don't know whether the material that exists on the website is it an actual essay from a candidate or is it just something that was whipped up by AI or somebody else generally, you know, and just put as an example. But this collection of essays is something which is the kind of essays that shows you the kind of essays that actual admits have. And as you go through these essays, you will also see the kind of introspection that they must have done to be able to write those essays. A lot of these essays are very vulnerable in nature because the candidates end up talking about things which are very close to them. But they are talking about those things because those experiences have really shaped them into the kind of person that they are. And that is what ISB wants in their essays. That is why they're asking you, okay, tell us about the kind of person that you are or the kind of leader that you've become. So the reason why we built this was because essentially there was so much misinformation that was spread around. We believed candidates deserve to see actual essays which really make sense and which help you get a sense of the kind of introspection that is required to build great applications, right? So feel free to sort of check it out and use the code 20 ISB essays, and that will give you a 500 rupee discount on this. Uh, Apart from the essays, as I mentioned, we have an MBA profile audit that is mandated if you want to work with us on the ISB applications. And for that also, for the next 5 days, we are providing a 20% discount. And you can use the code ISBR127 to get that because the first intake for ISB, we started on 27th, sorry, 5th, 17th of May. So that's mostly it from our side. Let's get into answering some more questions and let's see. So we have another question. I am from pharma background, working in drug discovery as a research associate, and I also have a post-graduation degree. What GMAT score should you aim? Aim for an 805. Is it work? Is it possible to work on extracurriculars during the ISB Edge program? I'm not really sure what you mean, but extracurriculars is something that you can work on anyway. So if you could elaborate on that question, I think that would help me understand that better. Um, we have another question. I come with 7.5 years of work experience. Saw that last year only 24 students from 8+ work experience. Okay. Do the chances reduce with more work experience? That's a very nice question. Thank you for asking that. I don't think that the chances reduce with more work experience. It goes back to the self-awareness part, right? Of the average work experience at ISB is 4 years. You will join with 8.5 years of experience. Why do you want to join ISB with 8.5 years of experience? Essentially, that is the question that you're asking. And that is also the question that ISB is going to ask you. So it's less about whether your chances have decreased. It's more about how much clarity do you have for that answer. Why are you looking for an MBA at this stage? What is your reasoning for that? And then how are you expecting ISB to be able to help you? Now, what I can definitely tell you is a lot of candidates in similar positions with very high experience, if they're applying within India, they would also apply to the 1 year programs at IIMs. So PGPX or EPGP. And a lot of them, when they get into ISB, but they end up choosing the IIMs because there the average work experience is around 8 to 10 years. So I am pretty sure that that would also be a reason why such fewer number of candidates you see with 8+ years of experience, right? Because the fitment or the class profile fitment of those people is much better with the IIMs versus ISB. So it's less about the chances reducing. It's more about, which program fits better with you, right? So I hope that clarifies. Let's go to another question. As a re-applicant, would a promotion materially strengthen my profile? My promotion is expected around R2, so would it make sense to apply in R2 instead of R1? Uh, Thank you for asking that. It would depend. Ideally, yes, it would materially strengthen your profile, but uh, this goes a bit too personal, and I don't think we have enough information at this point of time to be able to answer this. It could be that you already have all the elements that ISB wants and it should work, right? But to answer your question, yes, a promotion would definitely add value. Is a low GPA in undergrad an application killer? What is the most effective way to overcome a low GPA? It's not an application killer. And the most effective way to overcome the low GPA is to have a very good test score. Bhavani has a question. 7 years UPSC gap with no work experience possible. I'm not really sure if I understand the question clearly, but I'm assuming that you have 7 years of career gap without any because of UPSC prep, and then you don't have any work experience. If you don't have any work experience, I'm going to sound very harsh, but if you don't have any work experience, how are you going to contribute to ISB? How are you going to showcase career progression? How are you going to talk about your goals? And why should it be possible, right? Instead, why are you not looking for a job? So, see, this is where that self awareness plays a very, very important role. It's not just about, you know, do you meet the criteria? It's also about why do you need an MBA, or, how would it actually help you? So you have to keep that in mind as well. So, Ronak, thank you for elaborating. I haven't done extracurriculars since college, though I was active in dance and singing earlier. And with limited time before ISB R1 deadline, how can I rebuild or showcase this? Start with dancing and singing again, right? That is the only way to rebuild it. And that's it. Like, if you already know that you haven't done this and this is a gap for you, just get started on this. So build a community, join a community, take some action, uh, take do certain things with the dance community that you can, and that should help you sort of showcase how you would be able to sort of you know contribute to the ISB community. Khyati has a question: is choosing GRE for ISB a sound choice? Uh, is it a strategic call or a safe bet? Um, ISB is absolute. ISB is absolutely fine with GRE or GMAT. It doesn't really matter. They accept both the scores. If you have a score, if you have a competitive score for GRE, absolutely go ahead, apply with it. There is nothing wrong with that, right? So I think we have covered these questions here. Let's go back to some of the questions that we received from the candidates. So one question, let me see. How should I approach ISB essays to tell a compelling, authentic story? Right. So this is very, very important. When it comes to the essay questions, right? And I would really suggest all of you to go through the essay questions that you see, to go through the essays that we have shared. Essay questions are essentially based, uh, essay questions. There are two essay questions at ISB. The first one talks about who you are as a person. The second one talks about what is your learning approach been like and why do you want an MBA. The most important part of building good essays is essentially being very honest about who you are as a person. How have you grown through your life experiences? What has been the learning approach that you've built? And again, why do you want an MBA actually? And to be able to do all this, you will need a lot of self reflection. You will need to reflect on your choices. You will need to understand what motivated you when you made those choices. You will need to have a very good clarity of what actually did you want and what sort of drove you through the decisions that you've taken. Uh, the clearer you are on those answers, the better your essays are going to be. And when you go through the essays that we have shared, you will find that. You will find how vulnerable or how honest people get in their essays, because that is what helps them showcase the best, you know, of their candidature. So the key thing to build good essays, the most important thing, which is non-negotiable, is being able to really dive deep into who you are as a person, uh, reflecting on that a lot, trying to really put out very, very strong and very clear reasoning for uh, what you have done and why you have done those things. So let me also share the profile audit link. And again, for the essays, I think because the link is probably not working properly. All right. Any other questions? We have a question. Do you help with master's applications as well? We do not. We focus exclusively on MBA applications. Uh, and that is all we do. That is our niche. That is our expertise. And yeah, we don't plan on changing that anytime soon. We have a question. Does having too much work experience become a disadvantage? We'll have 5+ soon. 5+ is absolutely fine because the average experience is 4.5 years. So five is right in the corner for that. So 5 years of experience is an absolutely fine number to have. And almost for every single B school, you're absolutely fine. So it's not a negative at all. Right. So I think we are close to the end of the session. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you've had I hope this was a useful session for all of you. And if you have any questions, if you have any doubts, if you have any concerns that you would want to clarify with us, please feel free to reach out. We'll share the link for the ebook as well as for the profile audits with you, so that you are able to sort of look at them post the session as well. And thank you again so much for joining us. I hope this has been a enriching discussion. And if you have any questions, absolutely please feel free to reach out. I wish you the best for your MBA applications for ISB, and I hopefully all of you end up at ISB soon. Thank you so much.